in marketing, and somehow or another I established a reputation. No one ate me.
Okay, here we go. That was good for the audio check. Stand by, we're live in about 10 seconds here.
He's
So
dying to
quiet.
know the rest of my
There we
history.
go.
And the rest
Show.
of the story.
Okay, kind of quiet on the set here because I'm going to roll some intro music here. So stand by. All right, Rich Casanova here alongside Artie Rudiman.
Hello.
We love to call him Artio. So,
Hello from Artio.
yeah, we need help from Artio. So we were just having a little conversation before we went on the air with Sean Glaze, and we're excited to have him join us in the studio for this episode of the Buckhead Business Show. Speaking of the Buckhead Business Association, we have on our table right here the brand new 2018 Buckhead Guidebook. And if you're listening or watching, turn to page 71 in your hymnal. That's where we're excited to be found. For the Pro Business Channel studios. There you go. Nice, yeah. So we're taking a look at that. So Artie, just in 30 seconds or less, the breakfast this morning. Would you elaborate and share with the audience some of your takeaways from the presentation this morning and who spoke?
Sure. Sam Mansell, a former mayor of Atlanta, spoke about the beginnings of it. He started in 1960, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was incredible, and it certainly was a different town at that point. And we're talking about the Buckhead area, and he went over how it evolved and what processes that needed to take place, what infrastructure, and how it has flourished into the global community that it is today.
Yeah, it's just impressing here from his perspective, in either 90 or pretty real close to it. Just got married a few years ago for his second marriage, but in addition to that, just the skyline, how it's changed in the business community here in Buckhead. So again, being brought to you on behalf for the Buckhead Business Association. Check them out at buckheadbusiness.org. So Artie, you've been chatting a little bit beforehand with Sean, so if you do take a minute to introduce our guest here this morning, let folks know a little bit about Sean, and we'll jump into the conversation.
Absolutely. Sean Glaze is the founder and president of Great Results Team Building. And Great Results Team Building is all about getting the most productivity from your employees. And Sean goes about it in a very interesting way, which he will describe. But team building isn't just about the end of the year, let's have a retreat and have some fun. There's a very serious side that has ramifications for your company's ROI. And I'll let Sean kind of dig deeper on that a little bit.
Thank you very much, Artie. And again, Rich, thank you very much for having me.
Absolutely, our pleasure.
Really thrilled to be here to be able to share, hopefully, some helpful nuggets with your audience. I know whether it's as a business owner or an entrepreneur, one of the first questions they're asking is, who is this guy and why am I listening to him?
Yeah, right.
And oddly enough,
And can you answer that?
we're going to do our
So,
best.
yeah.
Got a couple of notes here. My background is honestly, though, as a high school literature teacher and basketball coach. So what can that guy do to help you be more profitable in your business? Well, hopefully I can share some stuff that's going to be really useful, because I would have had no answer for that a number of years ago. As a basketball coach, though, it was probably much later into my career than I'd like to admit that I realized that I was not quite as good a coach as I thought. And I think that hopefully after our conversation today, maybe your leaders and business owners and entrepreneurs look in the mirror and realize maybe I'm not quite as strong a leader as at first they thought. And the problem that I had, that I think so many business leaders have, is for the first 8 or 10 years of coaching, and was coaching basketball, high school varsity level, I focused primarily and almost exclusively on X's and O's. And we were focused on skills, we were drawing up strategy, we had a great playbook, and I was really proud of the plays and the skills and the individual improvement stuff that we worked on. But it was completely to the neglect of culture. And I think that all too often, it's not just a basketball thing, it's a business thing. Leaders focus almost wholly on strategy and neglect the culture, which determines how well the strategy is implemented.
You know, I can compare that much to what I do. I'm a business developer. And business development starts on the holistic side, the analytics, the insight. And yes, you come up with a value proposition and a strategy, but ultimately it's about...
And if strategy is what you want done, I think culture determines how well your people do it.
Well, what I was hearing, I don't know if this is an aha moment or not. I don't know if it will be trending or not. But I was making a note about your X's and O's, but missing the culture. So I came up with you're the CXO, the culture execution officer. Right?
I like that. That's
yeah.
terrific.
CXO, right? Yeah.
HR and the word execution should not go together.
That's true. Yeah. But what you're mentioning is that, but plans are not being executed, right? And there's no culture involved in this, right? In the X's and O's.
Absolutely. I think that in any industry, on any team, and one of the things that I realized as an older coach, as a more experienced, hopefully a little bit wiser coach, is that the same stuff that was helping my kids be more successful on the court could help organizations be more successful in their industry. Because people are people and teams are teams, and the same things that help teams to overachieve in basketball can absolutely be translated over into business.
I mean, I think since the first product was sold and the first sport was invented, they've been interconnected, right? And just the analogies, the principles that apply in terms of training, the prep, 20 years as a basketball coach, right? Successful basketball coach. I mean, you've got to carry that undeniably into your business strategies and consulting. And finally, along that line is that, back to that X's and O's. So you're accustomed to having a playbook, right?
Absolutely.
For a team. And would you concur you need that for your business, right?
Every business, and I think throughout recent history, that has been the primary focus of most business leaders, is we've got to have the business plan, we've got to have the strategy down, this is what we're doing this week, this is what our team needs to accomplish, these are the metrics for our productivity. And to the exclusion of, what have we done to connect our people to the two vital things that make a team that much more productive?
Yeah, because I know that a lot of businesses that are having challenges don't have a playbook. I know Artie's a big proponent of analytics and what you just mentioned.
Well, what I wanted to say is in the very beginning, I wanted to interject the serious side. So business owners and managers really need to understand the metrics behind what we're talking, because they really affect your ROI. I know some of the statistics, but you would know them much better than I. So if you can explain how people are engaged in the business and what the effect that would have on productivity for your business. So this isn't just about, it's a nice thing to do. We're talking about, this is a very serious element that can affect your bottom line.
Yeah, I think most business leaders at this point have heard of the Gallup poll that over the last many years has reported the disengagement that occurs in workplaces. That over 2/3 of employees are disengaged or actively disengaged, and even sometimes looking to sabotage team performance. And I think that engagement is something that as a business leader you absolutely want to make sure you're focusing on. And I think that the one thing that I combat when I'm speaking with a client, because a client, when they contact me for an event, for a speaking engagement, for a team building program, a lot of times they know they need something, they just don't know exactly what it is.
So what do you attribute that to, and then what's the solution for that lack of engagement?
Yeah, great question. Well, I think the lack of engagement is basically the result of people not being connected. And one of the things that I share with whether it is athletic teams or business teams is there are two things that are required to connect your people to in order to create energy, in order to create engagement, and ultimately to overachieve as a group, to turn a group into a team. Those two things are, first, you have to connect to a compelling common goal. People need to know why they're there. What is it we're here to accomplish that I can't accomplish alone, that I need you to assist me with, so that we have to collaborate. And that's really key, because if you don't know why you're there, your people aren't going to do much while they're there. So they need to feel like a small contributing part to something greater than themselves.
It kind of comes back to culture once again, right?
Absolutely. We'd love to touch a little bit more on culture in just a few minutes.
Absolutely.
But to give you the second connection, we'll make sure we don't leave the listeners kind of
Yeah,
hanging.
the solution, whoever.
Yeah. So I think the first thing is you need to connect your people to that compelling common goal. What is their why? And almost even more importantly, I think you need to connect them to each other. And I think that's where oftentimes leaders drop the ball, is they don't see the profitable outcomes. They don't see the ROI of those connections that need to be enhanced and optimized to build the relationships so that collaboration actually occurs.
Define engagement so our listeners have an understanding of what we're really talking about.
Yeah.
And we understand what it means, that they're interested, that they're connected, but dig deeper on that. What is engagement? How does it connect to productivity? What are the vital signs of engagement?
I think anybody that's played poker knows the term all in.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
I
I usually lose on that one, but yeah, so you hit a little bit of a sore spot. But go ahead. I know where you're going with
And
this.
I've certainly been all in and then
Exactly,
stepped up
yeah,
off, left the table very soon.
But it's better than
afterwards.
being lukewarm, right?
And I think that's what you want your people to be, is to be all
Yeah.
in. And have they really invested in terms of their emotions, their concerns, their thoughts, their strengths? Are they really contributing what they can and taking ownership of that goal? And I think we'll get into talking about what a winning teammate is, and hopefully turning employees into winning teammates is what an event would eventually do. And what that ongoing focus on sustaining great results in a team culture would do. But ultimately, you want those winning teammates to be engaged, and engaged teammates are those that are going to take ownership of results, or those that are going to be aware of and encourage others, those that are going to take a moment to show appreciation for the efforts that they notice, are going to make sure they respect the clock and the calendar, and all those things that, again, a great teammate in basketball is oftentimes a great teammate in business. And it was great to win games, but one of the things that I always took pride in as an older coach was teaching kids a whole lot more than just shooting and dribbling. It's teaching them to be a great teammate, because I think that's what ultimately gives them a chance to succeed in life.
And drill down on some of the metrics, too, for what we're talking about, of how many percentage-wise are engaged and how many are not, and how flipping that, inverting that, could really affect the bottom line.
Absolutely. Well, in the most recent Gallup poll, talking about disengagement, I think it was over 2/3 of workers were described as being disengaged,
Wow.
which means that they are not focused. They're basically underperforming and wasting company time. And that, you imagine, for a business that has even 20 employees, if those 20 employees, if 2/3 of those are actively disengaged, how much productivity are you losing because you've not invested time in really connecting them to a purpose and to each other?
So the solution is to just let those 2/3 go. That's the 80-20 rule. But this little widget right here is a lot of disengagement. I see this. I won't mention the company, but at a particular coffee house, half the time you see the employees texting and they're not involved in their customers, and they don't even realize the customer's there. They look up and then they're like they're still holding onto their phone while they're trying to interact with the customer.
Yeah. I think engagement comes down to two things. It's the same things that builds energy and cohesion on a team. And that is connecting to that compelling common goal. What is the why? And the second thing is connecting to each other. Have you given your people a chance to actually build enough of a relationship so you understand the background and the challenges and the desires and the strengths of the people they're working beside? And you mentioned the use of your phone. I think technology is an incredible tool that sometimes becomes an incredible distraction to those really deeper connections that allow teams to overachieve.
Absolutely.
I'd like to give an example of what I'm talking about, getting employees engaged. You will have much more examples. And as we move on, I'd like to hear some really good stories, of success stories. I'm sure that you have a few you can share. And I want to save some time for the end for you to talk about your team building exercises. I'm sure some of them are quite interesting.
We do some of them here today. We got the team building exercise.
but the work and coming on time and doing the right thing. There's also a creative side to it. And an example I will give, as a COO of an engineering company, I looked at the engineers who would come in the morning and they'd flick on their computer, and at the end of the day they'd flick off their computer and they'd go home. And it dawned on me that there was never a connection of where does this business come from that I am physically working on.
Yeah, and I think that that's a huge part of the team building process, and certainly a one-time catalyst event can have a huge impact on improving morale and communication and collaboration, but I think that focus and emphasis on an ongoing process where people feel like they are part of a larger puzzle. And I think sometimes helping to educate your team members so they understand the impact that their ripples have on other parts of the business.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I'm going to ask you, do you impart and educate the managers so that they know that it's up to them to lead that and to be creative? And I'll give you an example again, going back to the engineering firm. I realized that, marketing is always prospects, quantitative leads and quality of leads. And there are all these engineers that went to school, and guess what? 5, 10, 20 years later, their classmates are now the vice presidents of companies we can do business with. Well, I know it's not in an engineer's DNA to pick up a phone and say, hey, right? But they know them, so they could work with the marketing department and say, you know what? Use my name and call up so-and-so. That's an example of how the managers can become creative and bring that out in their employees.
Well,
I'm sure you have other examples.
Yeah, I think that's a tremendous example and point in terms of, there was, again, recent statistic that was shared, 87% of employees blamed project failures on a lack of collaboration.
Wow.
And I think that collaboration, that sharing of information, is right now a huge opportunity for business leaders, where oftentimes the answer and the opportunity is in the room if only you could get people to talk. Well, getting those collaborative conversations to occur is always going to be the result of first allowing them to build enough of a relationship so I'm comfortable reaching out. And one of the things that you're probably familiar with is the term silo.
Yeah.
The term silo. And I think that, oftentimes when a client contacts me, Sean, we need to do something about these silos. We've got to destroy the silos in our organization.
Right.
And I'm a little bit contrarian in that what I'll tell them is your issue is not silos. Silos are just evidence of individuals or groups who share a common background or share a common challenge or share a common something, and that gives them a chance to connect. Your job isn't to destroy that connection that's already strong. You don't want to destroy silos. What you want to do is to connect those people to others and to take the initiative so that the silo in your marketing department or the silo in your sales department or the silo in your back office has the opportunity to build some relationships so they understand the impact of what they're doing on other areas of the business.
I have another example of bringing out the creativity of the talent that are in your businesses. And that is, most employees today, especially when we talk about millennials or even older, are very computer literate. And right now, social media is a huge element of marketing. And there are individuals, I agree, not all, but there are some that are very adept at doing marketing on the internet. And you wouldn't think to tap an engineer to do that, or to tap a lawyer to do that. But they have that capability, and if you have 20 of them, maybe 2 will pick that up and do that. But you need to express it and to welcome them and to allow them to do that.
Yeah, and to give them that sense of ownership. And I think that so much of team building is not just connecting with a why, but connecting them with each other. And that's not only to build relationships and comfort for collaboration, I think it's also to establish an understanding and an awareness of what the strengths are of the people on our team so we can tap into those strengths and take advantage of them.
And I have seen such turnaround by the individuals that do get involved. It's, instead of just doing this every single day, I'm now doing this and that, and they feel very proud of themselves. They've had this additional ability that they didn't even know they had, but now they've been educated and allowed to express it.
So another thought here is to kind of pivot to is we just recently had a company up north of Atlanta talking about their corporate retreats and events and so forth that they conduct, right? Remember? So Sean, talk to us about a couple of hats that you wear, and we want to hear about your book as well. But talk to us about actually 3 books. Right, you brought one today. Now, they're not 3 copies of the same book. They're 3 different books, right? I published 3 books. It's the same.
Correct.
So we want to hear about that, but also we want to hear about this interactive events and entertaining keynotes. What are some of those topics, or what companies have you worked for, or what are some of those interactive events that you've conducted or been involved in, I guess?
No, Rich, I appreciate the question. And just to kind of transition a little bit from Artie's last point, I think oftentimes you and your employees it's easy to put blinders on and get caught up in what is your to-do list for that
Yeah.
day. What is
Yeah, there
your
you go.
what are your
Right.
key performance indicators?
Right.
What is it that you are actually being held responsible for in terms of your metrics? And you end up losing sight of how you might be able to contribute elsewhere. And I think that one of the things, whether it's millennials or others, that they're looking for in a job is a chance to feel like they matter,
Right.
a chance to have a purpose, to build relationships, because 90% of our day is spent there
Absolutely.
at the office, and the quality of our life is determined by the quality of relationships we have at work. But it's also a chance to develop. And I think in any role, part of my job is to want to get better and develop. And as a good leader, I want to give my people a chance to develop. Are you having those conversations so they understand? Again, my job as a coach is to help develop my kids and to have that preseason conference. What is it you want to accomplish
Right.
this year? And as a manager, as a business leader, as a business owner, have you had those individual conversations so you're giving people a chance to expand their skill set and maybe contribute in other areas?
And to voice what they want to accomplish, how they're gonna go about doing it, and then that ties in the accountability, right? Because it's their voice
Absolutely.
that they put these proposals on the table and these goals and objectives, right?
Absolutely, and I think that one of the ways you accomplish that, I think that, culture is a really popular buzzword today.
Yeah.
And there are 1,000 people that will speak on and tell you that they're here to consult on culture. And I think culture has become far more complicated than it really needs to be. I think culture at its simplest is just the behaviors that are allowed to be repeated in your organization. Whether that's on a basketball court, and this is how we show up, and this is how we go through pre-practice, and this is how we go through our shooting form, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think the exact same thing occurs in any corporate organization where culture is just the behaviors you allow to be repeated. Well, behaviors are always the result of beliefs. Beliefs are the result of awareness, and awareness is the result of experiences. So here's what I do with interactive team building events. My job is to make sure that I share with stories and experiences, whether it's a keynote or more of a half-day, full-day team building program, to make sure that I put the people through a really engaging, interactive set of activities that give them experiences that they'll remember. And I think there's a huge difference, and this is where I think Artie and I were talking off-air beforehand. I think there's a tremendous Grand Canyon-sized chasm of difference between team bonding, which is recreational, let's go have a little bit of fun,
Right.
and team building, which is far more intentional because
Yeah.
you want to have an applicable, relevant outcome that makes your team and your people better a week, a month, a year later.
That's a great point, because you can have those experiences in an outing and you feel great and everybody's having a couple of drinks and getting to know each other, which is ties into the culture.
Right.
But what you just described is a second phase of that, or independent of that. You need something that's actually going to translate into production, for that business and that organization.
Yeah, and the key thing for me as a provider to business owners and to organizations of the event or an ongoing event is I want to make sure that at the end of the event, at the end of our time together, 3 months, 6 months later, it's not just, that was a fun moment, that was a fun day.
Yeah.
Because if all it was fun, I've not done my job.
Yeah.
I want to make sure they have a great time. I want to make sure they have a chance to interact and go through some of the activities that then provide applicable and relevant outcomes and takeaways that they can apply the next day. Because here's the thing. My job really as a facilitator, especially at a half-day or full-day event, is to give them a chance to enjoy some ahas,
Right.
but I want the ahas that follow to be the thing that really affects business, and it's the ROI that we're interested in.
I like that, the ha-has, having fun, and translate into the
That is good.
ahas. Yeah,
I like that.
Yeah, try to say that 5 times. We just about 4 minutes remaining here, so we definitely want to hit on at least 2 other topics. Talk to us about your 3 books, your most recent book, and then we definitely want to have you share how people get in touch with you. And just a quick reminder, you're listening to the Buckhead Business Show, being brought to you in part by the Buckhead Business Association. Check them out at buckheadbusiness.org with our $1 billion Buckhead view. I feel like we could wave at the BBA right out our window here. Yeah. So Sean, talk to us about switching your hat to an author. A little bit of that experience in your book. What are some takeaways? Why would people grab a copy? And then
No, appreciate it. Yeah, real quick synopsis of each of the 3 books and why I think that hopefully at least 2 of them will be useful to your audience.
Okay.
The first one I actually wrote when I was still coaching. It was more of a book that was a parable, because I really believe, and whether in business or basketball, you can lead from wherever you are. So the first book is The Unexpected Leader. Basically, it's not the coach or the leader, but you can lead as a player, you can lead as a frontline employee by what you do to have an impact on your team's performance.
I love that. I'd like to read that book, The Unexpected Leader.
The second book was Rapid Teamwork, and that was basically for team leaders and managers and administrators. How do you take this group of individuals and turn them into a team? And basically it's another parable that uses the acronym GREAT. And to turn any group into a great team, the story again is hopefully somewhat entertaining. I'm a little bit biased. But you've got to have the goal. You've got to clarify that goal. You've got to build relationships. You've got to establish expectations. You've got to provide accountability. And then you've got to thank people and provide transfer and appreciation for their efforts along the way. And I think that's how you build a great team.
I missed the R there. What was the R?
R would be relationships. And
Okay.
again, that's something that as a young
And
coach,
I think the point
neglect.
for our listeners, executives and managers and owners, is not just about developing the camaraderie of your employees. It's learning how to be a leader and bring that out in your employees.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I like that Unexpected Leader. And then you have your third book here on the table, I imagine, or
Yeah, Unexpected Leader was the first book. Rapid Teamwork is
Right.
the second one for the leaders. And the most recent one that I'm really excited to share a copy with is the 10 Commandments of Winning Teammates. And if Rapid Teamwork is a book and kind of a how-to manual for leaders to create a team culture, the 10 Commandments of Winning Teammates is really for more frontline employees, because you want to make sure that you're the teammate that you want your fellow employees and coworkers to be. And again, in parable style, it shares 10 things that great teammates do. They're going to make your day far more successful and ultimately your business far more profitable.
you know, I haven't read it yet, but I love the parable because I'm thinking of The Go-Giver by Bob Burg.
Bob Burg, yes.
Because you're reading a story, but wrapped in that story are some great principles, right? You know, and sometimes if you're just reading fact after fact, you know, it doesn't really resonate. Again, it's almost like your book is experiential, right? Like an event.
That was the idea. Is you want it to be something they enjoy, and they come away from that enjoyable experience with some useful nuggets that they can apply.
And I won't read it. We don't have time for all 10 commandments, but I'll open with the first and the last one. So number 1 is to have fun, and number 10 is to claim personal responsibility. And you'll have to get a copy of the book to see the other 8.
For maybe 60 seconds that we might have left, give me one or two success stories and some of the unusual events that you have, or not unusual, but fun or productive.
I've been blessed to have keynoted at a number of conferences to share how to be a winning teammate and rapid teamwork, whether it's managers or frontline employees. Obviously, the team building events that I'll do are half-day and full-day events. They can find all that information at Great Results Team Building. Something I'm really excited to share with your audience, though, before we go.
Sure.
If they go to toolboxstuff.com, toolboxstuff.com, I actually have on one of the pages of my website, once you sign up to get free access, there's over 60 printable handouts, and quizzes and things you can find that you can use with your group. So even if you're not bringing me in as a facilitator or a speaker, you can actually, as a business owner,
Toolboxstuff.com.
take advantage of some of the handouts and activities that I provide there online, and use that as your own toolbox for teamwork.
And I'm looking at one of your opening pages here in the book. It says your contact Sean. To book Sean for your next corporate event, visit him online at greatresultsteambuilding.com. So why would someone book Sean for the next corporate event? Give us your best pitch.
That is a tremendous lead-in. If only I was prepared.
Yeah. So I mean, what are some you know, some stories? We almost have just about a minute left, but some of the testimonials, if you will, or some of the experiences at some of the events that you've done. You know?
Yeah, here's the thing that I would ask your listeners to consider.
Okay.
They've already spent a great deal of time on strategy. That's basically how they've built their business. How much of that strategy is impacted by the culture that they've built? And if they would admit that a large part of the success of that strategy is based upon their culture, how much have they invested in maintaining and building a quality, productive workplace culture? Because one of the things I'm very proud of, you can go to the client comments page on my website and see testimonial after testimonial of the fact that intentional team building, not just have a little bit of fun, but let's really be serious about have some fun and enjoy the interactions, but what is the takeaway, what is the application, and why are we going to be better next month because of what we're doing in the midst of that event?
And speaking of takeaways, I'm going to turn things over to RDO, and if you'd help us close out the show, RDO with some thoughts here, and we'll wrap it up.
Well, I appreciate learning. That's what we do. We share and we learn. I think a big takeaway for me, though, and it was my aha moment, not a ha-ha moment, was I always did, consider the team building aspect of, I owned a company for 20 years and had 100 employees, so I understood trying to get everybody on the same page, but I didn't think about educating the managers themselves to learn how to do that process and to guide and be a mentor to the employees. That's my big takeaway.
Very, very much love the opportunity to share with you guys. And again, if I could be a resource to any of your audience, you can reach me at greatresultsteambuilding.com.
And stay tuned for the next show, Team Building Resources radio show. Yeah, that's a little plug there. Yeah. All right, Rich Casanova on behalf of Artie Ruderman and Sean Glazer, thanks for being in here in the studio. We'll see you next time on the next episode of the Buckhead Business Show.
That was fun. I appreciate it, guys. Hopefully some of it was useful.
So where did we leave off when Rich told us to stop? I was telling you about, I was in the oil and gas industry
Right.
with the naval engineering company.
Got involved
Got
in
everybody
marketing.
involved into marketing somehow or another. That's when a Singaporean fabricator of offshore floating facilities. Now we're really getting, right? Oil and gas facility. What the hell do I know about that? Stephen, do you want to sit?
No, I'm fine.
It's cute. You guys have your own tablets too.
Okay.
Hello.
Perfect time. We get a seat reserved right here for you in our gallery.
Hi.
Okay. So, announcement. We need everybody to silence all their digital devices. So all your phones, if you put those all on silent, that'd be great. And I'm the one that usually leaves mine on, so. Anybody need the water? Okay, phones are on silent. I'm gonna make one more adjustment here. And joining us in the studio, you introduce yourself.
Oh, sure. Kimberly King,
Welcome.
University of Georgia's greatest graduate.
Nice. I love that. Yeah, you're on the next episode. Yeah. I like you already. We've had a couple of interns from Georgia.
Red and black, huh?
We've had a couple of interns from Georgia State in the studio. Yeah, working with us.
UGA.
Oh, UGA? You said?
Yes,
Oh, I thought you said.
University of Georgia,
Oh, the other great college. What
other
row?
great-
Yeah. Are we on air yet? Yeah. I bought the hashtag, by the way, awkward moments. Yeah. Hashtag awkward moments. That's my deal. Yeah. Okay. Now we're all queued up. We're gonna make some radio magic here and some history, y'all. All right. Okay, stand by one more time. Let's do one last audio check here for the inaugural episode of International Business Radio. And audio check for Spreaker.
Tom Rossland, live and reporting for duty.
Audio check for Mixler. And here we go. We'll just actually run a generic jingle intro just to give us a bookmark on either side, so just kind of, after it finishes, just announce a roll. Here we go.
Okay.
3, 2, 1.
Hey everybody, this is Tom Rossland. I'm your moderator and host for the International Business Radio Show. This is our inaugural broadcast. We are so excited to be on the air. Got an exciting 30 minutes for y'all. I just give you a little quick background about who I am. I am an attorney. I've been with a law firm in Buckhead in the Atlanta area for about 30 years. I'm a partner at Vodka, Ramsey Andrews, Winograd and Wildstein. I'm the chairman emeritus of the Swedish American Chamber of Commerce. I'm also recently honorary consul, appointed as honorary consul for the Kingdom of Sweden. And I come by, naturally, my mother was from Sweden and my father was from Norway. We have as our guest here, John Doyle, Vice President at Tempus, a foreign exchange and hedging operation that will help businesses with their interests and needs both here and overseas. We have Nadia Theodore, the Consul General of Canada, as our first guest. And we have Shane Roebuck, who is with Roebuck and Company. They are traders in 17th through 19th century antiques. Maybe we could just have a quick just idea from each of the speakers here what they would like to share with the audience. Maybe Nadia, you want to go first?
Absolutely. So happy to be here for the inaugural podcast of the International Business Radio. Looking forward to talking about trade, NAFTA, and the Canada-U.S. relationship, in particular, the relationship between Georgia and Canada.
That's great. And I have to just give a shout out to Nadia. She and I met back about 6 months ago when you were just here, newly arrived in Atlanta from Canada, and I was newly appointed as honorary consul for Sweden. So we've been at our first launch 6 months ago and hope to continue more in the future.
Absolutely.
We have now also John Doyle. Would you like to just tell us a little bit what you want to share?
Sure. Thank you for having us. I'm happy to be here. And I think what we're hoping to get out of today is to talk about how some of these international things that Nadia works on with NAFTA, how that affects some of our clients in the international space. And in addition, Shane, who's our client as well, the importance of timing and other aspects of the foreign currency market, which is the largest and the most liquid in the world, and how these things can affect even the smallest part of a business, how that can make a big dent on their big bottom line if they're not hedging their exposure correctly.
That's great. Shane, anything you want to add to that?
I just would add that I think what I could contribute is just with my relationship with Tempus over the last, I think, dozen years or so, and maybe speak a little bit about just what I do as far as importing antiques into this market, which is basically the only thing I do is buy in Europe. So Tempus has become very important to me, but I will just try to chime in when I find something I can contribute to.
That's great. I don't know if there's any particular thing to lead off with, but Nadia, we just had the pleasure of hearing you speak at a lunch event, and you were giving a wide-ranging, interesting discussion about Canada's role in the world and the current negotiations that are going on with NAFTA. And so there's just so many things that occur to me that we could be talking about. We've run past our 30 minutes in a heartbeat. But the thing that occurs to me is you talked about North America as a bloc. And I think America, in the political conversation or economic discussion, we think of ourselves as a sort of a sole actor. And I thought it was brilliant the way you explained to the audience that, Europe treats themselves as a bloc. They negotiate as a bloc. So I would love to hear your thoughts about where NAFTA currently is, the negotiations involving Mexico and Canada and the U.S., and your thoughts on how that should proceed.
Absolutely. I mean, that's exactly right. North America as an economic bloc has really had the opportunity to compete with the world and to compete and win with the world. And so when I talk about North America as an economic bloc, it's not to say that each of us do not have our own sovereignty, which is, important to all three of us. But it's really about understanding and accepting that if we trade together and trade vis-a-vis the world together as a bloc, we have a greater chance for our three economies to really win. And so NAFTA was negotiated really in order to create a North American bloc, a North American region, so that we can trade and win amongst ourselves, but also so that we could trade and win vis-a-vis the world. And so, NAFTA's almost 25 years old now. It's starting to show its age. The internet did not exist when NAFTA was negotiated. There was no such thing as electronic commerce. And so, you know, we, all three countries, I will say, I'll take the opportunity just at the beginning to talk for all three countries, I think welcome the opportunity to modernize the agreement. We've had 6 rounds of negotiations since August, and the 7th round of negotiations is happening next week. And, you know, things are plugging along. I'm cautiously optimistic that we can come to an agreement that's really win-win-win for all three countries.
That's great, and I guess this is a question maybe for the whole group. I was thinking about you, Nadia, and then also John. Just that next round that's going to be taking place in Mexico. What are you seeing, Nadia, maybe from a political perspective, economic perspective, that will be in the works? And then maybe, John, you could speak to what you're seeing in terms of market activity that correlates to that.
Yeah, so round 7, you know, let me step back maybe. So in round 6 was really, the way that I view it, the breakthrough round. It was really the round of negotiation where we started to have a conversation about some of the more difficult issues and areas in the negotiation. So, you know, we are talking about rules of origin for automobiles, very contentious. We are talking about what we call a sunset clause, which was a proposal put forward by one of the parties that the agreement would come to an end after 5 years unless we renegotiated it all over again. And up until now, we really hadn't started to discuss those in any serious detail. And so in round 6, we really started to get into that. And so I think that round 7 in Mexico next week will really allow us to continue that conversation. We've made good progress on some of the sort of more technical issues. We've closed 3 chapters in the negotiations, but round 7 will really be a continuation and another opportunity to really talk about some of the more difficult issues in the negotiation.
And how long does that round last?
It's going to be a week.
A week, okay. And John, do you have any thoughts on how that ties to what you see?
Absolutely. I mean, we follow your work fairly closely. During today's lunch, you talked a little bit about how some of the drawbacks at the beginning were a little bit of the uncertainty that came with the political changes in our country and things like that, and that really affected a lot of our clients who do a lot of business with Canada and Mexico, and obviously having foreign exchange risk in peso or the loonie. The Mexican peso, for instance, leading up and right after the election, lost and weakened to its weakest level ever. On that uncertainty that perhaps one of the world's largest economy may pull out of this, try to pull out of this trade deal. So I think what we've seen is, through your good work, I'm assuming, we've seen some of that uncertainty come off the table.
No pressure.
We're counting on you. And just having that sense that there is maybe going to be a return to normalcy, and that we will continue to be, trading our biggest trading partners are our neighbors here. Is something that's bringing a little bit more calm to at least the foreign currency markets in an environment where some of the other markets are having some volatility, to say the least.
Yeah, and I mean, listen, I am cautiously optimistic. And I mean, for people who actually are the businesses who export and import their goods, I mean, the price that they pay to have those goods enter the market is really about the bread and butter. I mean, and you know, you guys can certainly correct me if I'm wrong, but to me, that is the bread and butter of why we do these negotiations, right? And so having the certainty of knowing that your product is facing either no tariff because it's getting preferential treatment under the agreement, or is facing a reduced tariff because, well, under NAFTA now, I mean, all the tariffs are basically, at 0 for the vast majority of products. That is important, right? It's important for the everyday business person, the everyday person that's importing their product into the United States from another country, or looking to export their product from the United States to another country. And so, yeah, I'm cautiously optimistic that we're gonna see this through, and that the certainty that businesses need will be in place soon enough.
And I appreciate that, because from where we sit, there's a number of things that affect any currency pair, whether it be dollar euro, dollar pound, dollar Canadian, and a lot of the things Shane and I talk about are unemployment numbers on Friday, or monetary policy, where interest rates are going to be, and those are usually pretty vanilla. If this, then this is going to happen. And when you start entering more geopolitical type risk into the market, whether it be a war, an election, or something like potential United States withdrawing from NAFTA,
Right.
something that big, that uncertainty can send the market in ways we maybe don't expect. And with clients who have exposure that out maybe a year into the future where they have a bill that they know they have to pay in a year, how are they gonna have any certainty that, what are they gonna pay?
Price,
for?
exactly.
Which is, of course, some of the services we provide. We can talk about that at another time, but that certainty that we're getting now, it seems, at least we can go back and more rely on normal things for us, like monetary policy and fundamental data.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely.
So in terms of just your exposure to the foreign exchange market, does Canada have any policy about, you know, what you talking up the loon? Do you have to be worried about foreign exchange rates, and what do they do from your perspective, you know, with the trade bloc here in North America?
Let's get together and move the market. Let me call somebody first.
That is how unversed I am. I don't even know what that means.
Well, Shane, do you have any exposure to the foreign exchange market in terms of what you do, and how does that affect you right now?
Well, the NAFTA part is not something I'm really dealing with, but I do, because I import everything from Europe. But it's very volatile. And John was just speaking about political things that happen. For instance, take Brexit, shook everything up. And, you know, the pound was severely weakened. The euro always is going to play off of that to some extent. So when I make a big purchase in Europe, I have sort of, when he was speaking about uncertainty, I will wait, if I can, to pay just based on what information is going to be coming out. Or sometimes I have to pay right away because I know that something is going to get worse. You just have a feeling, or you know something's coming with this uncertainty in these different countries. So yes, it's something I definitely pay attention to. I don't watch the computer, but you know, I stay abreast. But with Tempest, the guys that work there and that cover me, particularly Shad Carpenter, he's keeps me very well informed. So it's a good relationship in that respect.
Timing is a big thing, I think,
Definitely.
and staying ahead of it, yeah.
So I was going to ask Nadia, just from your perspective, I know you've only been here in the Atlanta area for 6 months, so you know, I know you have a long tenure ahead of you, a successful tenure, but if you're looking at what you would already perceive that makes Atlanta right for international business and what Canada's role in relationship to that is, I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Atlanta and you know, much of I would say frankly, all of Georgia, but especially Atlanta being, you know, the capital and the hub of business, is really known around the world now as the place to do business. I mean, Atlanta has come leaps and bounds over the past, you know, 20 years in really showing the world what they have to offer. And so for me, it's about Atlanta having the workforce, the labor force, the skilled labor force across all different types of sectors. So not only advanced manufacturing, but fintech, the arts, the film industry. I mean, you name it, you can find the labor that you need here in Atlanta. That is what I have already found just being here for 6 months. Not only that, but you know, Southern hospitality is actually a real thing. I said to my family, I actually sent them a note. You know, I was here for maybe 4 weeks, and I actually sent them a note to say, guys, Southern hospitality is a real thing. I mean, you know, the fact that you can be here and be welcomed as if you were at home. I mean, I feel like I am in Ottawa. You know, I mean, just the welcoming environment translates into a welcoming environment for business. Because if you think about it, businesses are people, right? I mean, you set up a business, you have your employees that move down here, that move their families down here, that need to put their kids in school. And so Atlanta has really developed a strong sense of community, a strong sense of welcoming people from all over the world, no matter what your race, religion, creed, etc. It is a place where you can set up business, where your employees can come and feel welcome. And, you know, in terms of Canadian interests, I mean, we are your best friend, partner, and ally, right? We are your #1 customer. here in Georgia, and we have a significant footprint of Canadian companies who have set up here, right? Even over the past 3 months, we've had over $1 billion in investments from companies that have come here to do business in Georgia. So, the Canadian interest in the market here in Georgia and here in Atlanta is significant and will only continue to grow as Atlanta becomes a hub for the film industry, for fintech, and for cybersecurity, naming only 3 of many.
That's great. No, and I think also the state of Georgia, just a little plug, shout out to the Department of Economic Development. They do a great job.
Absolutely.
With the Consular Corps, and we just had a breakfast and a lunch event this week.
Absolutely.
And the state, you and I've done it before, but this will be your first time on the International VIP Tour. But every year the state hosts the Consular Corps and shows them different regions of the state and shows who the economic actors are, how Georgia differentiates itself. So you and I will both be in for a treat this year.
I'm looking forward to that. They know their business, that's for sure. The Georgia Economic Development folks, they're fantastic.
It appears they're doing a good job because we can see in our business, we have clients all across the country, and we've seen an uptick for sure in business in the South in general, but also especially in Atlanta.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So as far as, John, what you're seeing, how connected the markets are and the business flows, as we keep hearing the economy is getting better and better, right? And that's the expectation here in the Southeast. What are you seeing in terms of the business activity in the exchange markets? Does that get reflected in volatility? If you look at the stock market, what's going on there, how does that translate into currency effects?
Sure. Well, I mean, there is generally a good correlation with global equities in general with the U.S. dollar. The U.S. dollar has long been seen as a safe haven currency. So during the big global downturn in 2008, 2009, the dollar was a big beneficiary of that. And also with everything that happened in Europe with Greece, and then after that with Brexit, the dollar had a real good run. We've actually seen stocks take off. Well, we've been on an up path for 8 or 9 years now, but especially the last year and a half. And a little bit different we've seen is the dollar actually lose some ground. Shane can tell you the dollar lost about 15% versus the euro this year, and that had a little bit to do with the rest of the world kind of catching up to us. So we're the largest economy in the world, so we cough, the world catches a cold, that kind of thing. And now we've been on the path to recovery, and Europe and other countries are right behind us, so they're playing catch up. And with that means that their monetary policy is coming along. Our U.S. Fed had been on a rate increasing. We're going to continue to do that probably at least another 3 times this year. But now, on the other side of the pond, they're starting to get their monetary policy on a tightening path as well. So we've lost a little bit of that differential, and so that's why we've seen the dollar weaken a little bit. It's nothing to do with poor economic data here. It's just it's rosy across the world at the moment.
So Nadia, just for you, do you have anything to offer on
No,
that?
I was going to say, that's funny because we often say in Canada that, the United States coughs and Canada catches a cold. So I didn't know that it was worldwide.
Perhaps I stole it from Canada. That would be an American thing to do.
We welcome it.
So Nadia, I was just thinking, when you're looking at the next round of the NAFTA negotiations and the pace and the tone, can you just give a positive spin perhaps on what you're seeing, how things are proceeding?
Yeah, I mean, the pace of the negotiations is unprecedented. I mean, that is a fact. There's no way to sort of gloss over it, that we are negotiating round after round at a pace that we have never done before. And that has its pros and its cons, frankly. The pros are that people stay engaged. There's no time to rest. People need to be on their A game and make sure that they come prepared, and we don't lose momentum. That is for sure, right? Because we are meeting as negotiators very often. And we have also a significant amount of ministerial engagement, which is also something different than previous negotiations that I've been involved in. But on the other side, on the flip side, going so quickly between rounds does mean that the work that you do at home with your stakeholders and with your domestic industry doesn't happen as much as we might like it to happen. And so, I think that as we move forward through the next rounds, there will have to be a little bit of rebalancing done in that regard, and maybe not slowing the pace down, but definitely taking some time in between rounds to do the homework that we need to do back home as well.
And I know you're a modest person, but from what I understand, you actually have had the role of being a negotiator, correct? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure, happy to. So I was the Deputy Chief Negotiator for the Trans-Pacific Partnership Negotiation, now called the Comprehensive and Progressive Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement. So I was one of two Deputy Chief Negotiators. We were an all-female leadership team. Shout out to Kirsten Hillman, who is now actually our Deputy Ambassador in Washington. I love it. She was the chief negotiator on the negotiation, and Danny Carrière was one of the other deputy chief negotiators, and I was the second deputy chief negotiator. And then I also worked on the CETA, the Canada-EU Free Trade Agreement. I worked on it actually at the very beginning when we were just getting started, and then I left and I went to Geneva, had a baby, came back. It was still ongoing. And I worked on it near the end and actually was the deputy chief negotiator during the conclusion of that negotiation as well. Yeah, so I have a little bit of experience at the negotiating table.
Well, you could help the NAFTA bloc negotiate a better deal with the rest of the world, so that maybe is the next step. Right?
Exactly,
Very
absolutely.
Good. John, did you have anything you want to share about just your exposure to FX and what you believe is relevant information for the marketplace?
Yeah, and overall in FX, I think there's, a euro is a euro, right? Whether you get it from Goldman Sachs or Tempest or somebody like that. And I think the market here in the United States is a little different than abroad. Abroad, if you're in London and you're an international business and you have to pay €1 billion, for instance, you're going to be using a specialist. And here in the United States, it's a little bit different. For the most part, the banks still get most of that business, and we're kind of educating our clients to the fact that there is an alternative. And I'll let Shane speak to more about how a small business that is only solely focused on one specific thing, we can do that pretty great. And I think we do a good job of that.
Yeah, well, as far as going to a bank versus to a house like Tempest, I with Tempest because I like the people there and I like the customer service and the experience that they bring. And frankly, when I go to my bank, generally there's turnover, and there's not that many people at my bank that I even know. And I get better rates going through Tempest, and like I said, certainly better attention. But I think it all boils down to a relationship where you can feel comfortable and taken care of. So that's sort of, and I've been with Tempest for a dozen years, I think, and I wouldn't even consider going through my bank. So, and I'm loyal to my bank. It's just that for these sending wires and currency rates and things like that, I just think that somebody that does this every day and does only this is where I want to be aligned.
Yeah, and I think just to add on that, I mean, every business owner has an unbelievable amount of different things that they're worried about. Shane, you're on your buying trip, you're dealing with your small business, people paying you, things like that. So the FX part, I'm sure, is only a small sliver of your business. So if you're on the road, you always know you have Shad give you a call and say, hey,
well, yeah, I could.
This is going on.
If I have to buy something and send a wire transfer immediately, I just send an email from my phone, and it's taken care of. So, yeah, it works great.
Maybe we're an extension of your business, Shane. I need business cards, man.
Oh, maybe so.
I was going to say, isn't it funny how at the end of the day, no matter what you're doing, I'm in trade policy, trade negotiations, whatever, no matter what business you are in, it really boils down to the relationships.
Absolutely.
Right? It really boils down to knowing that to knowing the people and knowing that they will continuously be there. And it's the same thing in trade negotiations. We see each other time and time again in different fora. So the people that I was with were with me in Geneva at the World Trade Organization. You know, I saw them again when we were doing the TPP. They are now doing NAFTA. I mean, it's about the relationship, and it's about building that relationship and having that relationship continue. I think that's
Absolutely.
remarkable. Yeah.
And to me, for me as an attorney, the best negotiations are the ones where you're straight up about what is most near and dear to you. And if you're honest about that, it makes it so much easier to know what the pressure points are and to get that de-escalated.
Exactly.
When you spend 50 to 60 hours a week, depending on your job, working, you might as well work with and for people who you like.
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely.
It's a long chunk of your life.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely, yeah.
So this is sort of an open-ended question, but Nadia, not trying to put you on the spot, but since you're the VIP guest, you're relatively new here in Atlanta, and I know you've got several more years under your belt before you can write the end chapters of your experience here. But what would you think right now, looking forward, if you had the opportunity to say what it is that you would like to accomplish professionally? Let's start with that.
Okay, well, so professionally, for me, you know, especially given my background, it's all about NAFTA all the time. So for me professionally, when I am done here, I will say to myself, I succeeded. If I can honestly say that, you know, I reached every elected official in my state, so every senator and every congressperson who has skin in the NAFTA game, to be able to say that they had the facts with regards to the negotiation, and they had the facts with regards to the agreement, and that they felt that they were making their decision as to where they go with NAFTA and with trade between Canada and the United States. They were making that being informed, because that's my job, right, is to educate and to inform the elected officials here in the United States about the relationship between Canada and the United States and the trading benefits that we have, you know, between the two of us. So professionally, I'll say that it'll be a win if elected officials feel that they are knowledgeable and educated about how much Canada really is a friend, partner, neighbor, and ally.
That sounds like a great plan. We look forward to hearing more about that. Shane, can you tell us a little bit about how your business is growing, how you see it growing, and how it is growing for you here in Atlanta?
Well, I've been here and in business here for 25 years, and it has continued to grow at a good rate. As far as where I see it growing, well, actually physically, we're actually looking for another building right now because we need more space. Not only because we're buying more, but I mean, and that's good because we're selling more, but because such a large part of our business has become photography. You would be surprised, but we do so much online, and so even with our clients that live here, they choose to look on a computer rather than get up and come in and see it. So our photographs our photography, our website, our presence online, Instagram, everything has to get better and better every day. And so that's kind of a big part of us right now. And again, the space we need is to set up an even larger photography studio. But you know, it's just again about relationships. The way our business grows is if people talk about us. And so I hope that it continues.
Very good. Well, I think just if there's any final comments, we just have a moment left. So if there's just anything else that anybody wants to share, I'm opening it up to the group here.
I'm just happy to be here, and I'm happy that Shane was able to make it. And you were so excellent this morning. I'm happy we got to get an extension.
Thank you.
And now that I know more about the what's going on with the NAFTA negotiations, I can bring that back to DC and disseminate to our clients and.
You had better.
Some yes. Make it a follow-up email.
You had better.
And now that I know a Canadian,
Yes.
I might even go north of the border.
We would welcome you with open arms.
I'm going. I'm going to go.
You need to go. We'll talk.
You have to give me the rundown.
We'll talk. We'll talk.
By the way, I'm just a full disclosure. I'm originally from New York, and I would agree with you, Nadia, that the Southern hospitality is real, and it makes all the difference in the world. So glad to be here.
Me too. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. That's a wrap.
so fun, Rich Castle.
Good
You
job.
guys hear this stuff going on?
I just feel like it's like you all have
Good
radio
job.
voices.
Thanks.
Good job.
Yeah.
Good
job.
First time, I know.
You're so
good.
Yes.
How about all your radio voices?
Good.
This guy's radio voice.
God, I know.
You were awesome
Huh?
talking.
And
Give me a gift.
It's not the headsets that make you sound better, but we thought of that.
I love it.
He just lulls a jury.
Somebody's
Hang tight for some photo ops here real quick, if you would.
Yeah.
We'll do some
Don't
photo
jump out
ops
of your
here.
seats too far.
We get the
Okay.
paparazzi
Let's
involved.
clean, we're gonna clean the
as well.
table off a little.